Hello, my name is Anthony Soares. I'm the director of the Center for Cross-Border Studies, and I'm joined here today by Ben Rosher, who's a research associate with the Center for Cross-Border Studies and a PhD candidate at Queen's University Belfast. We're very grateful for you to be joining us for this presentation of the 5th quarterly survey on the conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation that the Center for Cross-Border Studies has been undertaking since the beginning of 2021. So this, in fact, is the first quarterly survey for 2022. You're very welcome. And what I'm going to do is now share my screen with you so that we get into the presentation itself. Here we go. As I said, I'm the director of the Center for Cross-Border Studies. You're very welcome. This is the first quarterly survey for 2022, the 5th quarterly survey all told. This quarterly survey that we undertake is really a vital means for us to understand what the conditions are like for organizations on the island of Ireland, whether civic society organizations or local authorities who are involved in cooperation, whether that's north-south or east-west, i.e. between the two jurisdictions on the island of Ireland, or between those two jurisdictions and their counterparts in Great Britain, and looking at how those conditions are being safeguarded, what is the nature of those conditions for that type of cooperation following the end of the Brexit transition period at the beginning of 2021, and the implementation of the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland, just to see how that might be affecting or not how organizations operate their cooperation on a north-south and an east-west basis. It's aimed specifically, these surveys are aimed specifically at civic society organizations and local authorities, just because of the fact that back in 2017, when the UK government and the European Commission, also with the input from the Irish government and from the Northern Ireland Civil Service, undertook a mapping exercise of North-South cooperation specifically to kind of have a look and see what cooperation was taking place. One of the things that they did admit afterwards was that in terms of that mapping exercise, trying to identify and classify and really record the various elements of North-South cooperation, one of the things that they pointed out afterwards was that areas of informal, local and community level cooperation may not have been captured by that exercise, and that was confirmed by both the UK government and by the European Commission after that mapping exercise took place. So we're concerned really that those types of cooperation that take place at that local and community level are not do not become invisible. They're vital elements of cooperation, and we want to ensure that cooperation is protected, is safeguarded. The conditions for that cooperation are maintained in the new context that we are now living with. We're also always enormously grateful for all those who do take the time to respond to these surveys, especially to those respondents who have taken the time in previous quarterly surveys to complete the survey each and every quarter. We really need that ongoing help in responding to future surveys, so that we can raise issues that are important to people who respond to them. Issues that are being identified by our respondents in terms of how they're encountering their north-south and or east-west cooperation activities. It's really important that we can identify those issues and then take them forward. And we're extremely grateful for that time that people are taking. But we would also like to remind people that this really is a marathon and not a sprint. The new context that is being shaped is an ongoing process. The implementation of the protocol is an ongoing process. It is not going to be over in a couple of months or in a few weeks. This is something that we're going to have to live with, that we have to face and to question for years to come. So this is an ongoing process. Therefore, these surveys are vital means for us to understand how that process is shaping up and how it is maintaining those really vital conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation. So it's really a thank you and a please in terms of really pleading with people to continue to take that time to respond to our surveys going forward. And just a reminder that those responses and the results that come from these surveys, they don't just sit there. They're not just go into reports for people to read. We actually act on what we encounter, the issues that are being raised through those surveys. Not so the Centre for Cross Borders itself, but also the ad hoc group for North, South and East West cooperation, which brings together a whole range of organisations from the island of Ireland who are involved in North, South and East West cooperation. We regularly engage with senior decision makers, senior policy makers, including those who are in charge, responsible for the withdrawal agreement and for the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. We engage with them regularly and raise issues that are important to organisations involved in North, South and East West cooperation, trying to ensure that we do protect those conditions for cooperation North, South and East West going forward. So it's just to reiterate that the issues raised, the results that come through these surveys are then proactively used in terms of those engagements with senior decision and policy makers through the Centre for Cross-Border Studies and the ad hoc group for North, South and East West cooperation. So I'm now going to hand over to Ben, who's going to take you through then the results of this fifth quarterly survey. So over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Anthony. Hello, everybody, and welcome to those of you who've joined us before, and to everybody who's joining us for the first time. I'm Ben Rosher. I'm a PhD researcher at Queen's University Belfast and a Research Associate for the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. Today I'm going to be giving a general overview of the results of our fifth quarterly survey as we start the beginning of the second year of Brexit proper. The fuller analysis will be available in the research briefing, which will be launched after this presentation. To begin with, I'm going to give sort of a broad explanation of the data, how it can be used, and any caveats and limitations we need to bear in mind. And then I'll give a breakdown on the respondents to this survey before heading into the substantive parts of the analysis, which look at the experiences and perceptions of cross-border contact, cooperation and collaboration, both in the North-South and the East-West dimensions, and attitudes to the protocol more broadly. Now, in this round of the survey, 92% of respondents have completed at least one previous round of the survey. And so, while the composition of the panel means that we can't make direct comparisons between this and previous rounds of the survey, because, for example, some people have completed the first and fifth round, some the second and fifth round, because we now have a very high return response rate, and thank you very much for that, we can start to infer the shape of some trends and attitudes in a very practical sense. And these insights are further developed through the inclusion of qualitative responses to the central contextual questions, which allow us to generate more nuanced insights into how respondents are experiencing the changing political, social, regulatory and material conditions for North, South and East West cooperation. And this information has been very valuable in painting a more detailed picture of the current context. This year we've changed, or we've altered our questions on the protocol. Previously we've been asking about how much information people feel they have on the protocol and where they get this information from. By this point, it's clear that pretty much all of the respondents have an awareness and a grounded knowledge of the protocol. And so in this survey, we're asking whether in their opinion, the protocol is a good thing or a bad thing for both North-South and for East-West cooperation and collaboration. It also bears emphasising, as it always does, that while this is a small sample survey, the respondents to every round of the survey have a wealth of insight and experience and expertise of cross-border cooperation and collaboration, and the results here need to be borne with that in mind, that we are dealing with experts in the field. So, the data for this survey has been collected via a survey of self-selected respondents that was conducted between the 1st and 31st of March 2022. We've gathered 51 responses in total, 92% of which reported they completed the survey in a previous quarter, and 8% are new respondents. So again, we're getting a good repeat response here. We can start to look at trends and patterns as they develop. Now, of the 51 responses to this survey, 35% were based in the Republic of Ireland in the south, 47% were based in Northern Ireland, and 14% had a presence on both sides of the border. 4% of respondents say they're not based on the island of Ireland, but still report a stake in cross-border cooperation and collaboration. Looking towards the North-South dimension, in this quarter, 90% of respondents have had meetings with organisations in the other jurisdiction on the island. For 61% of respondents, their level of contact this quarter has been at the same level as the previous quarter, and it's increased for a third of respondents. So we're still having very high levels of engagement, which is very positive and promising. 78% of respondents reported that their meetings with organisations in the other jurisdiction discussed challenges to cross-border cooperation, either on occasion for 46% or to a significant extent for a third. And the nature of these challenges were, as ever, wide-ranging. Though in this quarter, there is a clear cluster of concerns arising regarding the common travel area and potential concerns around electronic travel authorisation that may be being introduced as part of the Nationality and Borders Bill. And there's also concerns around the tax implications for frontier workers who are now working from home in the jurisdiction that they don't sort of officially working, and what the implications are there now that COVID rules are being changed in that regard. 86% of respondents are currently involved in cross-border collaboration with a partner in the other jurisdiction. And the main areas of collaboration for this are cross-border cooperation, community development, and education. And 75% of respondents are actively considering new collaborative projects. So again, this is a very high level of present and ongoing engagement. This is something that's positive, is reassuring. 57% of respondents who are presently engaged in cross-border collaboration have reported that they're in receipt of funding for their collaborative projects. And the predominant source of funding are either the Irish government or Northern Ireland government department. Now, if we look towards the perceptions of the contextual environments for North-South cooperation and collaboration, in terms of the political context, 69% of respondents believe that it has stayed more or less the same on the previous quarter, and 28% saying it's deteriorated. What's particularly noteworthy and concerning here is that no respondent has reported an improvement in the political context over the last quarter. Now, when we've asked respondents to expand on these experiences, respondents have pointed primarily to issues around the collapse of the executive in Northern Ireland and the forthcoming assembly elections as having a disruptive impact on the conditions for cooperation and collaboration. And we can see in the quotes here taken from the survey, some political uncertainty following the resignation of the First Minister and upcoming elections, the very real threat of a lengthy period in NI without an executive ahead of and following the Assembly elections in May can only heighten tensions, not just in Northern Ireland, but across the border. And the increased social unrest associated with the NI protocol in this lead-in period to the NI Assembly elections. So elections and the potential for someone not to return following the elections is something that's causing concern across the board here. Looking at the social context, 24% of respondents say that the social context has deteriorated since the previous quarter, and 8% have reported it's improved. The predominant response is that it's remained the same. 65% of respondents have said that the social context this quarter is the same as it was the previous quarter. Respondents have indicated that there are still concerns among the Protestant Unionist and Loyalist communities in response to the protocol. We can see in the quotes here that some groups have hardened over the Brexit agreement, and there are small elements of the Loyalist community in Northern Ireland trying to impede North-South cooperation and interaction as protest against the protocol. But as we saw in the previous quarter, and again it's manifesting here, the easing of COVID restrictions have had a notably positive impact on social relations. And you see in this quote, the lifting of COVID restrictions and an increased understanding on common social and economic challenges in the context of the recovery. So there is still some positive light coming through this. Looking at the regulatory context, 65% of respondents have said that the regulatory context has remained the same on the last quarter. 24% says deteriorated, and again, nobody has said that it's improved on the previous quarter. Everything is either staying the same or getting worse. It's not a positive outlook in that regard. When we've asked for elaboration on this, again, responses are pointing towards uncertainty regarding the common travel area, the impending introduction of electronic travel authorization, although many have pointed out that the protocol arrangements, at least for now, are stabilizing, and this is allowing them to operate within the context as it stands. And so we can see there's a concern about the pending visa waiver scheme being introduced by UK for Brexit for non-Irish EU nationals to travel across the Irish border into Northern Ireland. Introduction of the border by the UK government on the common travel area, and change in access for non-national Irish to Northern Ireland. If we look now at the material context, 57% of respondents believe that it's the same as the previous quarter, and 20% report that it's deteriorated since last quarter, with the same portion again saying that they don't know. And as we see again, there is not particularly strong, 4% say that there's been an improvement. Again, this is very small across the board, people noting improvements. When we've asked people to elaborate on this, they've recognized that there is essentially right now there's a complex interplay between several factors that are having an impact on access to materials, and this is sort of the increased cost of living, increased costs of materials broadly, the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on energy prices, and the quotes here is that the rising cost of living index, energy price shock resulting from war in Ukraine, and all elements of collaboration are being impacted by issues that continue to relate to the protocol. So it's difficult to disentangle what precisely the causes are here, because we are, for unfortunate reasons, living in interesting times, and so these are all coming together to impact on the material factors. If we look now towards the East-West dimension, this quarter, just under half of respondents, so 49%, reports to have meetings with organisations in Great Britain. For 69% of respondents, this is at the same level of contact as the last quarter, and 18% reported that their level of contact has increased. So while it's not quite at the same levels as the North-South, there is still quite a robust level of contact for the East-West dimension. 60% of respondents have reported that meetings with partners in Great Britain discuss challenges to cooperation either on occasion for 48% or to a significant extent for 12%. And these were on issues including the need for Northern Irish organisations to educate their partners in Great Britain on cross-border issues, and again, things such as the electronic travel authorisation scheme that has been coming up a lot this quarter. Excuse me. Now, 59% of respondents say that they are currently involved in collaboration with a Great Britain-based organisation. And the predominant areas of collaboration are community development and education. And 41% of respondents are actively considering new collaborative projects with partner organisations in Great Britain. Again, not quite as robust as the North-South dimension, but nonetheless still encouraging signs of, excuse me. Sorry. Nonetheless encouraging signs of ongoing cooperation and collaboration now and into the future. One possible area of concern is that only a third of respondents currently engaged in East-West collaborative projects have reported that their organisation is in receipt of funding for these projects. And that's been drawn mainly from charitable foundations, from the EU, or from the organisation's own core funding. So funding for East-West projects is something that needs to be possibly considered more fully going forward. So we look now towards the contextual environment for the cooperation and collaboration East-West. 61% of respondents believe that the political context has remained the same on the previous quarter, with 28% saying it's deteriorated. When we've asked respondents to elaborate on this, they've indicated a lack of certainty around the protocol. We can see in the quotes that it's difficult to gauge the UK government's commitment to the protocol. This uncertainty then has a detrimental knock-on effect on strategic planning for any potential new collaborations. And there appears to be a complete lack of trust between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, neither side fully listening to the other. Though there have been some notes of optimism, they are quite heavily caveated, and we can see here that there's improving dialogue with the main political parties. However, there's still considerable distrust of the Conservatives, which is quite a challenge given they are the governing party. And looking towards the social context, 73% of respondents report that the social context has remained the same on the previous quarter, and 16% said it's deteriorated, with only 4% reporting an improvement. And respondents have reported to a lack of contact is hampering cooperation, but again, this is possibly improving with the removal of COVID restrictions. And we can see in the quotes contradictory experiences, in that for some there is no change and very little social contact. For others, the end of COVID restrictions is allowing for improved levels of contact with partner organisations in the other in Great Britain. Looking now at the regulatory context, 22% of respondents say that the regulatory context has deteriorated over the last quarter, and 59% of respondents say it's remained the same. And again, they've had different experiences where we've asked to develop on this. One has pointed towards increased complexity, and others have pointed toward there being no change at all. So for one respondent, we've got that simple issues such as shipping of goods are more complicated with new customs and regulatory formalities. But another respondent said, I'm not aware of any regulatory changes between Northern Ireland and Britain that would impact on our project or potential new collaborations between the regions. So there are different experiences based on the type of industry and the type of project that's ongoing. And finally, now when considering the material context, 51% report that the material context has remained the same on the previous quarter, while 24% report that it's deteriorated, and 22% saying they don't know how the situation, or if the situation has changed. The respondents this quarter have pointed towards not so much the protocol, but the recent issues surrounding P&O ferries and the knock-on impacts of that for Great Britain Northern Ireland movement. And so the P&O ferry dispute will impact on supply chain, and the war in Ukraine will change the material context. Northern Ireland is on the periphery and lagging behind on sustainable energy initiatives. Now, as I say, we changed our question on the protocol this year to get some different insights. And we're asking respondents whether they believe it is, on balance, broadly a good or bad thing for North-South and East-West cooperation. And 73% of respondents report that they believe the protocol is, on balance, a good thing for North-South cooperation, compared to 22% who are unsure and only 6% who believe that it is a bad thing. In terms of East-West relations, 53% believe the protocol is, on balance, a good thing for East-West cooperation, with 28% being unsure and 20% reporting it's a bad thing. So, well, it's not unanimously positive across the board. Predominantly, the protocol is seen as a good thing, or rather a good than a bad thing, for both North-South and East-West cooperation and collaboration. Obviously, this is the protocol as it's being implemented now, which is not fully, this may change, but as things stand, the protocol is generally seen as a positive for now. Now, in addition to the questions we've asked specifically around political, social, regulatory, and material conditions, we've also asked respondents to provide, in their own words, any additional comments and insights they feel would be beneficial to helping us understand the impact of Brexit and the protocol on cross-border contact and collaboration, both North-South and East-West. And the tone of these responses generally have just they've been calls for increased engagement and communication. It feels like people in the border region and people involved in civic organisations are being talked past and talked over by the EU and by the British government, and need to be talked to and engaged with more fully. And in the quotes here, we can see that the protocol is a good thing if implemented in the correct spirit. From the ground level upwards, cooperation has the best chance of succeeding with people-to-people contact. At the higher level, better cross-border train network could encourage casual travel in both directions, and the dismantling of railway network over decades has had a negative impact on the movement and travel, especially in Northwest. Again, this is something that's going to feed into concerns around the electronic travel authorization and cross-border movement for non-Irish EU nationals. And finally, fact-checking is needed. The loudest voices are those of the anti-protocol groups. Fear-mongering and lies are the norm. Where are the counter-arguments and counter-voices and fact-checking that needs to be done? Now more than ever, the civic engagement process is needed to ensure the voice of those on the ground are heard. So, to round up and summarize, as we head into the second year of the protocol, respondents are now broadly used to the protocol as it is, but are aware that this is not the protocol as fully developed or is fully implemented. So as such, there's a sense that the still unsettled relationship between the UK and EU is likely to see further changes to the protocol, and that the broader political landscape in Northern Ireland, already disrupted by the resignation of the First Minister, is likely to face further uncertainty following the elections in May. And what this means for North, South and East West cooperation and collaboration in the present is a continuation of the trend that we saw established towards or over the course of last year. Namely, that we're in a situation that can probably best be described as precarious stability. And the predominant response across all contextual questions is that both East, West and North, South is that the contexts are the same as the previous quarter. The majority of respondents said that the context, both North, South and East, West, have stayed the same as the previous quarter across all contexts. The second is generally that they have deteriorated. And so when at the beginning of 2021, there were clear indications that conditions were deteriorating across all dimensions. At the start of 22, there's strong evidence that these now deteriorated conditions have become normalized. What's concerning here is that there are very little signs of improvement across any dimension. So we're currently existing in a sense of kind of state of stasis that is at a lower level of quality than it was this time last year. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to improve at least back to that level. And so just to put it in a sentence, at the start of the second year of Brexit under the protocol, civil society is learning to adapt to a new normal that has fewer opportunities, but still feel they're working on some shifting ground and aren't quite sure where they're going to be heading into the future. I'm sorry, that's not a happier note to end on, but I'm going to type there and pass back to Anthony just for a few final notes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Thank you for that. Just to pick up there on what you said was not necessarily a hopeful note, but I think it's really what we have been seeing is that sense that since the beginning of 2021, that civic society organisations and local authorities, to a certain extent, see themselves as having to be operating in an environment that has become uncertain, really, and that uncertainty comes through a lot. And there's also uncertainty caused very often in terms of what's happening at the political level. There are issues raised there around trust, not entirely sure how the political context is able to support cooperation on a north-south and an east-west basis. But also what struck me there, particularly on the east-west cooperation side, was where respondents were giving their sense of the regulatory and material context. There was actually a significant minority of don't knows which really kind of gives you an indication of that uncertainty in terms of what is happening in terms of this new context, what is the shape of the new context, and you identify there into even some quotes there which were kind of contradictory. Some who are clear that the regulatory context is impacting on in terms of their ability to cooperate, where others actually say well, we don't see that. We're not aware of that context impacting on our particular cooperation activities. So a lot of uncertainty and a sense that we're not in the same context that we were previous to 2021. And that, as you say, people have kind of got used to working in this uncertain environment, and that uncertainty meaning that they're not sure where they're going to go forward. But also like to highlight, and you did highlight, in terms of when we look at the North-South cooperation front, huge amounts of activity and a more kind of willingness to engage in new people thinking about new collaboration on a North-South front. Not this, that is not happening to the same extent on the East-West front, particularly those thinking of engaging in new East-West collaboration. That's much lower than what's happening on the North-South front. And you also indicated that the much lower percentage of those who are on receipt of funding for East-West collaboration, and that is, as you say, an issue that perhaps needs to be looked into, needs to be addressed.
Yeah, one point I will just pick up on that point. Somebody asked in the previous survey if I could look into how the perceptions split based on respondents based in the North and in the South. And I've not put them in the slides because I works in small figures and there's lots of minute things to go into, but broadly speaking, the perceptions and experiences on North-South are the same for respondents based both in the North and in the South. Proportionally, they're having broadly the same experiences. In terms of East-West, respondents based in Northern Ireland are slightly more positive of East-West cooperation and collaboration than those in the South, but only very slightly. So there's not much to tell differences between respondents based in Ireland or based in Northern Ireland.
Thanks for that, Ben. Just to alert people to the fact that along with this presentation, there's also a research briefing which goes into much greater detail, and the data is there in terms of the responses in the research briefing, which you can access by going to our website, www.crossborder.ie, where you'll find not just the research briefing for this particular, the 5th quarterly survey, but for all previous surveys as well. And you will also find on our website all of the presentations that were made for every single survey since the beginning of 2021. So you can be delighted to see Ben in various, ever useful, right from the beginning of 2021 all the way to this year. So you can access those at our website. And just to let you know, I mean, if by listening to what has been said and the data that's been presented, the results that have been presented, and the comments that have been made, if you want to contact us with any follow-up questions or any comments relating to the results that we presented here on the 5th quarterly survey, please don't hesitate, don't be shy in getting in touch, and you can just drop me an email at a.soares@qub.ac.uk. I'm very pleased to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to do that. We always welcome your thoughts, your questions, and just again to finish off by giving a final plea or an advanced plea, let's say. This is the 5th quarterly survey. There will be obviously the 6th quarterly survey, and we would really appreciate for people to respond to that survey. And just one other final comment. As Ben pointed out right at the beginning, the people who respond to this are self-selecting respondents. We're not, these surveys are not aimed at individual citizens. It is aimed at people who are working within organizations, civic society organizations or local authorities who are involved in cooperation, North-South and or East-West. That doesn't necessarily mean that the individual responding, let's say, represent the entire views of an entire organization, but they are people who are closely involved in North-South and or East-West cooperation. So as Ben pointed out, people with a wealth of experience, direct knowledge on the ground of what's happening, and so we really appreciate that. So in saying that, that the respondents are respondents who are involved in cooperation. One of the things that we do have to consider, that we have to bear in mind, is that this isn't going to capture the responses, the attitudes of organizations who are not involved in cooperation. That's the other thing. And the other thing that we have to be aware of going forward is making sure that we capture those who may have been involved in cooperation, whether it's North, South, and East, West, but are no longer involved in that cooperation. That is an audience, that is a kind of constituency that we would be really interested in hearing from, those who have been involved in cooperation but may no longer be doing that. It's just to get their views on the conditions for cooperation, and perhaps why it is that they have disengaged from cooperation, whether that's North, South, or East, West. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to kind of join, to look at this presentation of the fifth quarterly survey on the conditions for North, South, and East, West cooperation. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you again at the sixth quarterly survey where we present the results for that. So thank you so much, and have a great day, great evening, whatever it is for you, wherever you are. Thank you very much.